Club Wealth. We are live. I'm in New York City, somewhere around New York. I'm not exactly sure where I am right now, but we've got Brian Curtis of Club Wealth right here with us. Super excited to have Brian on the webinar today, and super excited to be with you guys. We're going to be talking about, well, let me back up. For those of you that don't already know Brian is a freaking rock star. He's in Bentonville, Arkansas, and is consistently doing, he and his team are doing anywhere from 30 to 40 transactions a month right now. He's killing it. And so let me tell you, man, Brian knows, if there's one thing Brian understands, it's subconscious relationship building through neuro-linguistic programming. Brian is really, really good about things like embedded commands and all kinds of different neuro-linguistic programming techniques that we're going to kind of introduce you to today. We don't have time to go over all of them, and it really is one of those things where you've got to build from a foundation. So we're going to start off kind of on the easy side. We're going to give you some good, deep information on how to do some of this stuff, and then as you go on, we'll be able to build on that. We'll do subsequent series of webinars for Club Wealth members on exactly how to do neuro-linguistic programming from start to finish. And let me tell you, when you learn this, it makes it very, very easy to get people to do what you want, like list your home with me, or get them to write an offer today. Those are things that we can get people to do when we understand these techniques. And so I'm excited to have Brian on today. Brian's also a Tier 3 coach at Club Wealth. That's a pretty big deal. That means he's a Tier 4 coaching client. Let me tell you something. Brian Curtis knows what he's talking about. So, Brian, no pressure. Didn't mean to build you up so huge that now you've got this big thing to live up to. But welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Michael, it's great to be with you. So I appreciate the opportunity. So, well, should we just jump right in? Is that kind of what we're wanting to do?
Let's do it, absolutely. And by the way, let me just do this. I want to make sure the attendees can all hear us. So, guys, would you do me a favor? If you can hear us, go ahead and raise your hand. I just want to see that you guys can hear us. So go ahead, and I'm getting, okay, I got all kinds of hands going up now. That's good stuff. All right, good. So, Brian, we're going to let you get right out. And by the way, as we go along, if you guys have questions or comments, questions for Brian or I, or any comments, go ahead and just type them into the questions box on your screen. There's two different boxes. There's a chat box and there's a questions box. Ideally, if you'll type them into the questions box, that'll make it easier for me to keep up and make sure that we're getting all your questions answered. And so without further ado, Brian, take it away, man.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with what Michael said. Please, please, please ask questions. I probably talk for an hour and a half straight, but I'd much rather deal with, what kind of questions that you guys have and what you have coming up. So, Michael asked me to do, and I thought about this, and we've talked about embedded commands quite a bit in the last, I want to say about 3 months. We've been really kind of bringing it up. Michael, wouldn't you agree that it's really kind of been about 3 months that we've really kind of focused on it here at Club Wealth? So there's many of you who have probably heard embedded commands, and those things are extremely powerful. And honestly, one of the things I hope that if you guys come to the conference that you'll get to see is we actually try to build those embedded commands right into our listing presentations, right into our presentations. The reason is I don't want to have to think about it. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but sometimes it's nice to just, when I get to this part of my presentation, I say this, and the embedded command is right there, and I think that's great. However, what I wanted to focus on today is just a little bit different because we've already kind of ridden that horse. And if you guys have questions about embedded commands, please ask, and we may cover it a little bit today. But I wanted to take a step back because one of the things that people look at is we can teach them to do all the neuro-linguistic programming that we want. The problem comes in if we're not in rapport with people. It's literally like just throwing something up against the wall. It literally just bounces back at you, bounces back at you, bounces back at you. So I thought that we might just start a little simpler and something that a lot of people don't think about, and that's how we talk. So in case you guys, even though I'm not in Michael, I'm from New York, so I talk quick, and I talk with a lot of energy, and I talk with my hands. I'm not in, but you wouldn't know it. So that's me. But when I'm standing in front of some people now, like Michael mentioned, I live in Arkansas. And when I first moved here to Arkansas, you could probably tell that I'm not necessarily the person that you typically think of Arkansas. I've got all my teeth. No, I shouldn't say that. So anyway, one of the things that I'd like to talk about, I think it's one of the most important things, is building rapport. So neuro-linguistic program does not work at all if you're not in rapport. So the very first thing that I look at every single conversation that I'm in is the tone. So, and that tone comes to a lot of different things, the volume. In case you guys haven't figured this out, my wife tells me I talk way too loud all the time, and I walk around our house. I do laps when I'm doing phone calls, so I have to be careful. So, but if I'm with someone who's timid, I can't talk like this because I'll scare the heck out of them. I'll scare them away, and they're intimidated by that. If I'm a timid person, if I'm a person who talks very quietly, and you're talking to somebody like me, I'm like, so the very first thing I want every single person to think about when you're talking to somebody is, am I talking at the same volume that they are? And I know that sounds simple, but here's the reality. People like people who are like them. And so volume is the very first thing that I look at when I'm talking to somebody. When I'm talking to somebody on the phone, when I'm talking to somebody in person, and it becomes probably 10 times more important on the phone. The reason being is, 93% of all communication is nonverbal. Well, if I'm on the phone, the only thing I've got is the way either I'm talking loud or I'm talking soft. I'm talking fast, I'm talking slow. So when you get on the phone with somebody, ultimately we want to mimic them to some extent. So very first thing I like everyone to think about in that situation is volume. So that's the very first thing. Then it's how fast you talk. So I'll ask you a question, Michael. You said you participate with me. If I talk super fast, what's an assumption that you make about me?
What am I thinking about you? I'm thinking you're a salesperson. You're trying to sell me on something. You're trying to railroad me.
Absolutely. And it's not true, but that's what people think. And all of this stuff happens at a very, very, very subconscious level. So no one's going to come up to you and go, Brian was talking really fast the other day. That must mean he's a slick salesperson. But what they will say is, I don't know why, but it really felt like Brian was trying to sell me something. Not, hey, Brian was trying to help me, or hey, Michael was trying to help me. So the number one assumption that people make about people who talk fast is that they're trying to pull something over on them, that they're slick, that they're salespeople. And let's face it, we don't want to be perceived that way. So I'll do the exact opposite. What if I talk really slow? What do you think about me?
Dude, are you a knucklehead? You must not be very smart. You're talking all slow, like.
Exactly. So this is what I fight here in Arkansas. I'm not from the South, and there's nothing wrong with the South, but people in the South talk much slower than people from New York. So, the number one thing that I have to fight, I have to slow down. I have to get it back. I have to add a little bit of Southern drawl. And apparently, if you talk to my family, when I go home, they laugh at me because I say things like all and fixin', and I was never fixing to do anything until about 10 years ago after I moved down here. So, you learn to talk like the people that you are talking to. So you slow down, you take pace. Now, this doesn't mean that you lose energy, because I think a lot of times people take that perception of slowing down as losing energy, but please understand that you want to talk at the same pace as they are, but that doesn't mean you lose the energy. It doesn't mean you lose enthusiasm. That's probably the hardest thing we get. We equate also talking quickly with high energy and high volume with high energy, and we also equate low volume with low energy and slow with low energy. But the last thing that you want to do is talk too slow to someone like me, because Micah was very nice, but I'll think you're dumb. I'll think you're stupid. I'm like, that guy, he doesn't have any clue. So ultimately what we want to do in every situation is just kind of take that. Now here's something that's really cool, and I would love, and I don't know if we can get a report back on this in a couple of weeks or not, Michael, but one of the things that I love to do is we call it pacing and leading. And so if I'm talking to somebody who talks like me, talks super fast, then what I'll do is I'll talk to super fast just with them, and I'll hang out, and then I'll start to slow that pace down and slow that pace down and slow that pace down. And the way you're in rapport is when they slow down with you. Now, long term, we can't hold that. People are who they are. You're not going to get me long term to be quiet and slow. It's not going to happen. It would take years of deprogramming to do that. And so you're not going to deprogram these people that you work with in the first 5 minutes that you're with them. But you know that you're winning, if you will. You know that you're in control of that conversation a little bit if you can actually get them to change their pace either up or down, or if you can get them to be a little bit softer or a little bit quieter. Or you can get them to be a little bit louder. Whatever it is, we do all these things, and what happens is we end up in rapport, and they actually feel like you're becoming their best friend a little bit. So it looks like you had something to say, Michael.
Well, I was going to add to me, it's, we talk about matching and mirroring, and another thing that's very similar to that is if you're talking to somebody and they've got their arms folded and they're really, kind of like this, when you're having that conversation with them, you fold your arms, you match their body language. And then over time, you kind of loosen up just a little bit, and then you kind of drop your arms just a little bit, and you'll notice that they will do the same thing. And if they're leaning away from you like this with their arms folded, as you bring them forward, you lean forward. And what happens is people really will, and Brian's hit the nail on the head. You'll know you're in rapport if they subconsciously begin to mirror what you're doing with your tone of voice, with your rate of speech, with your volume. As you do those things and they're matching you, that means you're in rapport. That's where you need to be in order to go for your close. So it's good stuff, Brian.
Absolutely. And one of the things I would suggest to everybody, it's hard to know exactly all the time, 100% of the time when you're in rapport. But when things are going badly, and they do, I mean, let's face it, we've all had either a listing appointment, a buyer's appointment, and you're like, boy, this is a train wreck. So
just the other day.
I was at a 2-hour, Michael does a 37-minute listing presentation, and mine was 2.5 hours the other day, and I couldn't get out quick enough. I did list the property, though. So... But when I'm sitting there listening to this person and going, okay, I need to get in rapport with her. And that's literally what I'm saying, as I probably should have been paying attention to what she was saying. But really what I was saying was, how do I get in rapport with this person? How do I get her to feel like I'm the person to work with her? How do I get her to feel it? So, I'm just looking at, okay, how's our speech going? How's our body language? And body language is great in person. And honestly, it's probably the easiest and fastest way to get in rapport is body language when you're in person. But if that doesn't work, then you have to go to these other things. And unfortunately, there's no body language on the phone. They can't see my hands, they can't see my body language, they can't see my eyes, ears, nose, none of that stuff. So on the phone, it becomes very, very vital to focus on tone, volume, and rate. Those are the three things that we really work on the phone. But so you're trucking along and you don't notice that things start to go sideways. This is a great opportunity to just say, okay, am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Am I too loud? Am I too soft? Whatever it is. And, one of the other tricks or problems that comes up is I've got a woman who talks really fast and I got a man who talks really slow. So then you have to even get trickier. It's like, okay, when I'm talking to her, I got to talk fast. When I'm talking to him, I got to talk slow or quiet or fast. And what I don't want you guys doing is concentrating on this 24 hours a day as you're sitting and talking to people. But when you notice yourself get a little bit out of rapport, when things aren't going well, or you notice one person, like I'm really connecting with the wife, but the husband, I completely lose him. Switch. And you can switch back and forth. And again, they'll come with you. These things are all super important. And I think we actually, at some point in time, probably need to do a webinar on how to touch people, but I'm not ready to do that webinar today. But I think it's important. I think that when you're touching people in the right way, it makes Michael's laughing at me.
So bad. I'm laughing because it's true. You do. I mean, you do. There is a way that you need to touch people, and there's times that you want to touch them. Like when I'm doing an event, I'll pick a particular person out that I want to anchor to. If I've got really good rapport with somebody, I'll walk over to them and I'll literally just gently put my hand on their shoulder. And as I do that, I'm now anchoring to that person, and I steal their mojo almost, right? It's like all of a sudden I get their power. And so when Brian's talking about touching people, that's what he's talking about, and there's many ways that you can do this. When I'm shaking somebody's hand, if I'm just casual with them and I don't have any rapport with them, I might shake their hand. If I'm starting to go a little bit rapport with them, I might grab their elbow with my other hand while I'm shaking their hand. If I have good rapport with somebody, I might put my hand on their shoulder as I'm shaking their hand. And if I really want to go deep with somebody, I'll literally just give them a hug. And you start to get used to, who do I do which of those things with? And the further down that path I can get, the closer I can get, so if I can go from handshake to hug through that process, as I do that, now I've got not only rapport, but I've got a relationship. Now I've got trust. I've got confidence. And when people know, like, and trust you, what do they want? They want to do business with you. So you do, and it sounds kind of all politician-esque, but these guys study this stuff. There's a reason why. You watch Bill Clinton, watch what he does. Literally, Bill Clinton, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're conservative or Democrat, it doesn't matter. Bill Clinton is a master at NLP. That guy knows NLP. And you watch, when he shakes someone's hand, he'll grab their elbow, he'll grab for their shoulder. He knows how deep he can go with which people, and it makes a difference. And that's part of the reason why that guy got elected.
I completely agree. And if you ever get an opportunity to talk to Bill Clinton, in person, you'd be amazed at how he. of course, he's from Hope, Arkansas, so therefore we know my wife actually worked with him on a campaign, so
Yeah.
we know quite a bit about the Clintons. It's kind of an interesting story, but we don't have time for that today. So that's the number one thing. If all the rest of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, it becomes almost completely irrelevant if you don't and are not willing to spend that time to find a way to be in rapport, whether it's body language, which again, like I say, is the easiest way to get in rapport often, or if it's tone, volume, and rate. And so those things, that's the very first thing. If you don't take anything else away from this, if you don't learn how to do an embedded command or a tie down or any of these other things that we may talk about, if you're just in better rapport with your clients, you're first of all, you're better than about 95% of the real estate agents out there. Most agents get in rapport by luck. And what I mean by that is they happen to find something, they're walking through their house and they see, oh, this guy's a football fan. I'm a football fan. We'll talk about football. The problem is the wife hates football and now that. Or whatever happens to happen in that situation, we make all these assumptions. So we know for sure that if we do these things, that no matter what your political views, whether if you like football, if you like basketball, whatever it is, we know that this is a commonality that we can have literally with every single person that we talk to. And we don't have to have anything else in common. We're just going to act a little bit more like them because people like people who are like them. So that was kind of my first thing today. There's a next transition I want to make, and this is something that's really come up. And there was an interesting study that was done. I don't even know when it was done, but it was done a few years ago. And Michael asked me NLP, and I was doing some research a couple months ago on NLP. So what are good NLP words, for example? So I found 2 NLP words that I think are extremely powerful. And I wanted to share those words with you today because I think that if you add the vocabulary, that you'll see your closing rate go up. And so oftentimes people ask me, well, Brian, why would I study this? Well, the reason I would study this is 2 reasons, and one is more important than the other. There's only 2 ways to close more deals. I either got to keep doing the exact same thing I'm doing and talk to more people, or I got to close at a higher percentage. Those are the only 2 ways that I'm going to get from the number of deals I'm at today to a higher number of deals. And, you hear us over and over again, get on, make your phone calls, make your phone calls, make your phone calls. But what if you could make the same number of phone calls that you're making today and be 10% more successful or be 20% more successful? It's so important in our business. I tell people this on our team. If you close 1 more transaction a month, what does that mean for you? If you think about it, if their average commission to them is $3,000, they close 1 more deal a month, $36,000 a year. If they close 2 more deals a month, you guys can do the math. It's pretty easy. So here's a word that we go around and we try and see how many times we can use this word in 1 week, and this is kind of things that we practice. It's a great, simple thing. And I learned this from another business that I was in, and you guys laughed at me, so I'm not going to tell you what that was. But the word is today. So here's what a lot of people do. We get to a point where we're asking people to buy something today. Because we don't want them to buy it next week, 3 months from now, 6 months from now. We want to buy it today. So a rule on our team, before you ask someone, are you interested in running a contract today, is we've actually said that 5 times before you actually get there. So it's real simple, and it's not even anything you have to really work on except be cognizant of it. So if I show up and I meet Michael, hey, Michael, how's it going today? I got 1. So, later on is, what do you guys think of this house today? There's 2. You just go through and you can continue to talk about this thing. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you guys today. I've said it 3 times and they have no idea that I'm even doing it. So when I get to the end, so we'll take a listing presentation, for example, I'm moving all the way through this and I go, so, guys, looks like everything, works out pretty good. It looks like you like what we're doing for marketing. And, so, here's our contract. Let me go over it. I just need you to sign it here today. And it's not the first time. They had no delusion that, and again, it's that subconscious. We put this word in their head over and over and over again. So when I expect them to do something today, it's not the first time. They don't know it. And again, it's something that it works better than you can ever imagine. And so I'll go back. The reason where I learned this trick, if you will, is I used to sell timeshare. So if anyone's ever been to a timeshare presentation, you get to do today or today or today, and that's the only option is today. And honestly, I sold timeshare for a few years, and literally I never saw anyone come back. So if you go to a timeshare presentation and tell the person you come back, think of me, and I'll wave at you and say, you're not coming back. So we had to do everything today. And you'll see it with car salesmen too. And again, I'm not trying to say car salesmen are bad, because there's a lot of good car salesmen. I tried to buy a car the other day. So, but when they walk in, they know that if you don't do something today, that there's a real good chance that you're not coming back. In car sales, people do come back sometimes. In real estate, people do want to think about it, and it is sometimes their most valuable asset, the most important decision that they're going to make. So they will do it today. But, they may think about it and call you in the morning or call you in a couple of days. But, the most fun thing you can do is get someone to sign today, and they've got 2 other listing appointments behind you, and you get to call them and say, hey, by the way, this is Brian Curtis with Keller Williams. Sorry that I know you had a listing appointment scheduled with Bob and Sue Smith over on 123 Main Street. They decided to list their house with me. So if you want to do something that's fun, get to call their agents, cancel their listing appointments. That is.
I got to share a story with you there, Brian. I was literally on a listing appointment with a guy named Hob. He was down in Tacoma, and I hope John Schlombusch is watching this right now, because this guy. I'm in the middle of it. I was competing against the number 2 agent in Washington at the time, which was John, and I knew that I was competing against John. And John and I know each other well. He's a good guy. We always tease each other. And I got this guy to list with me today, right? So I got his signatures, and while I was in the listing appointment, John calls the guy. And the guy says, oh, hey, look, it's your buddy John. I said, hey, let me answer the phone. So the guy hands me the phone. I kid you not. I literally pick up the phone. I said, hey, John, it's Michael Hellickson. How are you? Fine. I said, John, I just want to let you know I just listed Hobbs' house. And, hey, that buyer you were mentioning that you had for the place, we'd love to have you show it to your buyer this weekend. So we'll be expecting to make it available to you this weekend. So you can show it to your buyer. Dude, silence on the other line. That was the funnest call ever, man. It was so awesome. But Brian, you make a great point. When you get people conditioned to certain words, and today is a powerful NLP word, when you get people conditioned to today, and when you go for your close, it's no longer, oh, we want to think about it overnight. It's, oh no, we're doing it today. And that's very, very important, you guys, because Brian's right. If you think you're going to go on a 2-step listing appointment where you go out one time and you go get it listed the next time, the second time you go out, what you're really doing is you're going out to preview somebody else's listing. That's it. Because they got the listing and you didn't.
Exactly. So, Michael, today I'm gonna change gears a little bit. So today is one of my words, and we'll have another one a little bit later in the webinar. Today is one of the words that we use over and over and over again. So I heard you say the word that is a no-no on our team, and I've already said it twice during this webinar, and I didn't mean to. I'm working on it. I'm getting better. It's progress, not perfection, is think. So every time you want to sit down and eliminate, when you get that buyer who goes, he always wants to think about it. He always wants to think about it. Well, my question is, what kind of questions are you asking throughout your presentation, whether that's showing a house or in a listing appointment? How many times have you said the word think? And again, it's a very, very, very powerful word. And we are very, very programmed to say it over and over again. So, Michael, what do you think about this? Oh, crud. Every time I say that, it's like, okay, I just asked you to think about it, which is the exact opposite of taking action and doing something today. So, we see this over and over. So what can we replace it with? It's how do you feel about it? How do you see that? These are the exact opposite words of think. And if you can eliminate think from your vocabulary, it's a great thing. I think a great thing that we did on our team is we offered people the opportunity to do that. And I came back and said, how many times? We went through and people were talking about it, and they're like, yeah, I was saying think like during meeting somebody 5, 6, 7 times. So you don't basically want to tell them to do the exact opposite of what you want them to do. And again, it's okay for people to think about things. I'm not suggesting that we try and ram something down somebody's throat, but we don't want to subconsciously plant something for someone who wants to do something, especially, for these buyers who are out there right now. We're in a seller's market, and I'm going to subconsciously plant a suggestion that you go home and think about it, and I call you the next day and say, sorry, Bob, I know you love that house. I know you went home and think about it last night, but unfortunately they got 3 offers, and one was a full price, and they just took it. So, even though we want people to make really good decisions throughout this whole process, we don't want to encourage them to basically not take action. And, you know, we've talked about DISC profiles and a lot of different things, but in case anyone doesn't know this, 70% of our population is a high S DISC profile. And so let me explain the significance of that. The high S is people who like stability, people who like security. That's what that S kind of stands for in my mind. I keep stability and security. So people who like stability and security, they don't like to make quick decisions. So when we give them permission and actually give them subconscious suggestions to go think about things, they don't take quick actions. And again, honestly, a high S person is probably not going to want to take a quick action anyway, so we don't need to make that even worse. So, you know, if you want to do a fun experiment with yourself, take $1, kind of the equivalent of a curse cup, if you will. You know, every time you curse, you put $1 in it. Maybe a worse word to say than any of those curse words, depends on your affiliations, but might be think. And so you say it over and over and over again. And if you just watch that, you know, whatever we focus on expands. I firmly believe that. And if you guys go back for the next week and say, I wonder how many times I said the word think, you're going to be really surprised. And if you just eliminate that one word from your vocabulary, then things will really change for you, I think. So those are my 2 words. Do we have any questions? Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was just to say, I completely agree with you. And I'll be honest, I didn't even realize I said it. And I've got to get reprogrammed to being cognizant of when I say the word think. It is, because all you're doing is you're programming people's brain to say, we want to think about it overnight. We want to think about it. We want to think about it. No, you don't want to think about it. You want to freaking sign today, right now. Sign the freaking paperwork. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? No, fantastic. Sign here today. I mean, it's really, I know. And so, all right. So, by the way, for those of you that do have questions for Brian or for me, go ahead and type those into your questions box on your screen, and we're going to get to those. Brian, one of the things that is very important when it comes to NLP is consistency and repetition. And so we talk about this a lot, but I don't think people really understand how important that is. So it's repetition in 2 ways. We need to nice, Debbie Miali. She's like, should I use the word sign the freaking paperwork? No, it's
absolutely close.
That's awesome, Debbie. Way to call me out. I love it. That's awesome. So, but essentially, what you got to do is you've got to not only repeat it ahead of time so that you have your brain programmed to that language, but then in the appointment you've got to repeat it as well. You guys will notice when I do events, oftentimes people hear, and I'm doing it to teach the principle of embedded commands, for example. And I'll say things like, give you an opportunity today to sign up for coaching today. And the reason I say, and I do that multiple times in multiple different ways throughout the conversation, but I'm using the word today, I'm saying sign up for coaching, I'm embedding that command. There's all of this stuff really comes together, and it's amazing. It cracks me up. In the times that I don't do that, when I go teach an event and I've got 100 people in a room or 1,000, doesn't matter how many people. When I've got all these people in a room, if I don't use those techniques, the result that I get at the end of that event are very different from when I do use those techniques, even though the people in the room know what I'm doing. It doesn't matter that they know what I'm doing. What matters is it's attaching, it's embedding in their subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is far more powerful than your conscious mind, and it becomes compulsory. For example, Brian, when I nod my head, what are you compelled to do? You nod your head. If I shake my head, you're shaking your head. And it's your subconscious takes over. And guys, that's what we're tapping into here. We're tapping into that subconscious mind, and it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So please make sure you're practicing this on a daily basis. Hey, go have some fun with your wife and your kids a little bit. You know what? Screw around with their heads a little bit. And I know it's terrible. I shouldn't be saying that. And I hope my wife and kids aren't watching. But it's funny because my kids do it to me now. Last night, they're texting me and they're talking on the phone. I can hear them. They're saying, so, Dad, you want to let us get Snapchat today, right? What are you talking about? No, I don't want to let you get Snapchat. No, Dad, you want us to have Snapchat today. Let me tell you all the reasons why it's good for us to get Snapchat today. What? I mean, guys, you need to do that. So anyway, Brian, I didn't mean to steal your mojo. Keep going, man. I'm loving this. This is good stuff.
That's great. So we went through one positive word, and so here's another word that is really, really powerful, and people use it, but they don't always use it correctly. So this is a word, if you add it to your vocabulary, if you add it to your conversations with your clients, closing rate of things that'll happen will double. And so it's an interesting study that they did about a Xerox machine. And I know this is really kind of 101 stuff that you would think about this, but they had some people and they lined up at a Xerox machine, and a guy walked up and he said, "Can I cut ahead of you and make a copy?" Well, when they did that, about 95% of the people were like, no, you can't cut ahead and make a copy, because I waited here for 15 minutes to use the Xerox machine. Why should you cut ahead of me to make a copy? So he added one phrase to that, and the percentage of people who would allow him to cut ahead went up to about 65%. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's over 60. He added the word "because." And that is something that is an extremely powerful word. Hey, can I cut ahead of you because I'm going to be late for my next appointment, or because of this, or because of that? And the word "because" gives people an excuse to let you do what you want to do. You know, I'd like to come over this afternoon because I have these 2 appointments times available, and I don't have any time available tomorrow. Well, since you don't have any time available tomorrow, I'll let you come over today. Or, do you really want to make an offer? I'm not sure. Well, you might want to make an offer today because we're in a seller's market, and right now I don't know if this house is going to be available tomorrow. Where most people just say, well, you might want to make an offer today. You do know it's a seller's, but you say because they hear it. It kicks in. It says, oh, wait, something important is about to follow the word because it causes, and I said it again, because that's what's going on in our brain. So consciously use the word "because," and it helps you close at such a higher rate. You have to give people a reason to do it. When I go back to timeshare, so we always used to say you can't ask somebody to do something again unless you change some of the information or change the price. So, for example, if you're sitting there talking to somebody and they say, well, I'm not sure if I want to do this, and then you say, I completely understand you don't want to do that, but let me tell you why you want. It's because of this, or because if you don't go look at this house today, I know there's 7 other appointments and we may not even get a chance to look at it. Or if you don't get your house listed today, there's an election coming up in November, and by the time we get it on the market, the whole market might be crud. We have going to happen. You give people a reason to do things, and then they'll act. And because here's the thing, they don't always think about it. And we have all this information. We also make horrible assumptions as real estate agents that everyone else knows what we know. And it's not that we're genius. This is our profession. This is what we do every single day. And therefore we have information that people don't have. We've been telling people now, and it's almost embarrassing, but I've been telling people now for 5 years that interest rates have to go up. You should take activity today, because if not, interest rates could go up tomorrow. Eventually I'll be right. And I'm sure many of the other agents on the phone call have been using that same interest rates have got to go up script. And eventually we'll be right. And I'm starting to use it again for January, because we know we'll have a new president, and theoretically they'll probably raise the interest rates.
Yeah.
So
but give people that. I do, yeah. So one of the things, I'm thinking about listing appointments, right? So if you're on a listing appointment and they're saying, well, we just want to think about it overnight, or we want to think about it over the weekend, say, and Brian, what Brian did, there's a couple things that you may notice on the script that Brian just recited, or the dialogue. It's really more of a dialogue than a script. But with what Brian just said, he first affirmed what they said. So Brian, let's role play this real quick. Give me the objection that you want to think about it over the weekend.
Well, Mike, I think it's just better if I think about this over the weekend. I'm not 100% sure yet.
Yeah, Brian, I completely appreciate that you're not 100% sure yet and that you want to think about it over the weekend. Let me suggest this. We may want to actually get it listed, do the paperwork today, because that will give me the weekend to prepare all the marketing, get all the stuff done on the back end, so that when you're ready to have it go live on Monday, we can be ready for the market. So, So again, I've just given him a reason, but what I did was it doesn't matter what they say, I always have to affirm what they say. So if they say, you know what, Michael, I'm not going to list it, until, you're going to have to list this thing over my cold, dead body. I would literally say something like, your cold, dead body? Fantastic. When would that be? And I would literally, and seriously, I've done that before. Why do I do that? Because first I show them that, hey, look, nothing you say is going to get me sideways. And then I'm going to go right into the because and the today and the embedded commands. I'm going to hit all of these things as often as I can in as many different ways as I can. You guys, you'd be surprised. Instead of taking 3 hours to wear someone down on a long listing appointment, or 2 hours in Bentonville, as the case may be, I'm just joking, you'll be able to wear them down in like 45 minutes instead of your 37 perfect listing appointment. So, Go ahead, Nick. But
So, Michael, you use the word affirm. In our language, we call it acknowledge, which is the same thing. And that's something that I wasn't necessarily going to cover it specifically on this webinar. But if you didn't take anything away from this webinar except the word acknowledge or affirm, and I call this the marriage counseling thing. And I know it's kind of funny, but if you watch any television show where the husband and wife go to marriage counseling, this is exactly what they do. They tell them your wife or your husband says something dumb, and you repeat back that exact same dumb thing to them. And really what it does is it makes them feel hurt. So, a great example of this, somebody calls you, my favorite is someone calls you off of Zillow and you call them back, or someone puts in information on Zillow and you call them back. Well, Zillow has the price. And so they say to you, well, I was just wanting to know what the price was. Well, clearly that's not what they wanted because the price is on Zillow. So you acknowledge, Bob, I completely understand that you just want to know what the price is. Well, the price of that house is $155,000. So when are you looking to purchase a house? So, and honestly, this is, and you and I were talking about that earlier, but we call that, Chris Smith kind of deemed it ARP, which is acknowledge and then respond and pivot. So, but I love the acknowledge part. You use that every single time somebody says something relevant to you. You just repeat it back to them. And again, it breaks down stupid things when people say ridiculous things and you repeat it back to them. They're like, well, that's, it kind of removes their defense. But more than anything else that acknowledgement does, and this is why we do it in marriage counseling, is because it shows the other person that you heard what they said. Even if that thing was dumb, they now know that you were listening. And let's face it, you'll hear this over and over again in life, and you'll hear it in business. Well, my agent didn't listen to me. Well, I know that my people feel like, and again, it doesn't even matter if it's true, they feel like that I'm listening to them because I always repeat it back after. When I'm showing houses and people go, these are great hardwood floors. I agree, these are great hardwood floors. And I know that sounds really silly, but they know that I heard them. They know that I know that they like hardwood floors. So if you acknowledge things over and over, it builds a rapport. And again, it kind of goes back to our initial step that really helps. And then when people say things dumb, you give them the information as you want and you twist, you pivot, is like Chris says, and right away you're back to talking about what you want to talk about. You want to talk about when they want to buy a house. You want to talk about when they want to list a house. Whatever it is that you want to talk about, you acknowledge, you respond, and then pivot, and all of a sudden you're right back to where you were at. And they won't even know what happened. And it's really one of the most powerful techniques. I'm not sure it's necessarily NLP, but it's, like I say, I call it the marriage counseling close. So.
You're right about that. What's really cool about that is you're right, that they really don't know what happened. They get to the end and they're like, and I've had this happen a lot of times. I get to the end of a listing appointment and I've got all the paperwork signed. I'm walking out the door and they'll say to me, or sometime later, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road, whenever, they'll say, we didn't plan on listing it when you came out. I don't know if you know this, but there's no way we were going to list it. We have no idea how you got us to sign. How did you get us to sign that listing? We weren't going to list it. And I'm just like, well, gosh, I guess the situation, the circumstances were just right, and it just, I don't know, whatever. But I mean, literally, it happens all the time. They have no idea what hit them. They have no idea why they did what they did, but they did it, and they're glad when they did it. Now, again, from an ethical standpoint, you guys, you got to be careful with this, because this really is, when you really learn this at a deep level, it is a bit unfair, and you can get people. You're not going to get somebody to do something that goes completely against their morals or values. But you can certainly get people to do things that may not be in their best interest. So you need to be very, very careful to only use this to do what you truly believe in your heart is in their best interest, and what you believe they would do if they really understood what was in their best interest. I'll give you an example. If I know I'm competing against a knucklehead agent, I know that guy's probably going to screw this up for them, and it's going to cost them money on the largest financial transaction of their lives. I owe it to them to not let them fall victim to this guy. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they list it with me today. So anyway, point being, you guys, be very, very careful with this. So, all right, good stuff. And by the way, I noticed we've got Coach Rick Ranis on the line with us as well. I'm going to see if I can get Rick to throw his camera on there as well. I noticed that he has been listening here. So, Rick, I just sent you a camera. Oh, there he is. How's it going, Rick Ranis? Oh, now he's black again. We got the screens completely gone. What's that? All right, we lost his screen feed.
I'm just living the dream. How about you guys?
There you are. We're doing well, brother.
I'm just living the dream, Michael.
So, Rick, I want to ask you a quick question since we've got you online. For those of you that don't know, Brian is actually Rick's coach, and Rick is also a Tier 2 Club Wealth coach. And so Rick's a rock star as well. Rick, what I'd like to know is from what you've heard so far, what do you plan to implement this week? What are you for sure going to do this week to start engaging in some of these NLP techniques?
Well, I think the most important thing for us is really just focusing on better conversations. It's about having the right dialogue, about knowing what you're going to say when you get started. And I love the embedded command approach. It produces outstanding results.
Right on. Good stuff. So, Brian, back to you, brother. Keep it going.
All right, so I'm going to end, I guess technically I probably should have ended on a good word, but I'm going to end on a bad word on this subject. So here's something that, and this is actually something that my wife taught me, not as sales, but it holds true in sales, is here's a word I'd like for everyone to eliminate from their vocabulary, it's no. And here's why. So if I say to you, Michael, the sky's blue, what's your response to that? Or the sky's green, what's your response to that?
No.
No, it's not. It's blue. But what happens is we put a shield up and we say no. When we hear that no, and our clients say dumb things to us all the time, and it's not necessarily because they mean it. Or so what we come back with is, can I do this or this or this? And we go, no, you can't do that. Blah 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 blah. There's a softer and easier way to say that. So if someone says, well, can I do a home inspection on this home before we write an offer? In Arkansas, and again, I don't know other states, we do the home inspection after, because what if you're doing a home inspection and then someone else buys the house out from underneath you? It doesn't make sense. So instead of saying no, you can say, hey, let's do a home inspection first. Well, that's a possibility. We could do that. Maybe instead we could do this instead of, no, that's not the way we do it. And for me, I was a no guy, and I still work on it all the time. It's, when someone says something I don't agree with, my immediate response is no, and then I respond. But really, that's very defensive to people, and I've had to really, really work on that. I'm not going to say the word no. I'm going to say, well, that's possible. Or, again, acknowledge, if someone says to you, well, maybe we should do a home inspection before we write an offer. Well, we couldn't do a home inspection before we write an offer. Let me tell you why, generally speaking, people don't do that. That's one approach. Or, no, that's not the way we do it. Which one comes across better? Which one makes me feel like Brian's listening to me instead of Brian has an agenda that he has to do it his way? And I promise you, I've said the first one. I've said, no, we don't do it that way in Arkansas. We do it this way. And I guarantee you that person was not happy with me. So, if you can eliminate the word no, it helps so much. And I've got Michael over here in tears, so that's helping me out.
Well, here's why I'm cracking up, because you've been doing this to me all week, man. I keep hearing you do this all the time. Every time you disagree,
Michael says, "No, Rick, you can't do that. No, Rick, you can't do that."
It's progress, not perfection, guys.
No, I'm saying when he's been doing the second one to me. I mean, all the time. Every time Brian disagrees with you on something, he's like, well, Michael, we could do it that way. Or, all the time, and I'm fine. I didn't even realize. I'm like, dude, you're NLPing me. I couldn't believe it. That's hilarious.
Well, the more we practice this stuff, the more we do it every day. I mean, that's the truth. We have an agent on our team. Her name is Kim, and we were doing some NLP stuff one day, and she sends me a text message, and I remember which technique we were talking about. She's like, I did this with my daughter last night, and she did this, and she did that. And so one of the things is, we often call it language of sales or neuro-linguistic programming sales or whatever. What I like to think about all this stuff that we're doing, and it helps me do a better job, and B, also not be manipulative with it, is all I'm really trying to do is communicate better. And as a man, this is not my strong suit. Ask Lisa. She knows. It's not really. It really isn't. I'm not necessarily built. My answers are short and to the point. In case you guys know about DISC, I'm a high D. I don't want to have a conversation. Do we want to do this? No, we don't. Let's do something else. That's me. So I have to work on being a person who wants to have these conversations, who wants to, consider how we want to move forward instead of just, no, let's not do the home inspection. We do that later. We do this, and this, and this. So it's really important. I literally practice this stuff every day of my life, and it helps me in my personal life, and it helps me in my professional life. So yeah, Michael, I'm sorry I wasn't NLP, and yeah, I'm purpose, but yeah.
No, you're just so good at it that you do it subconsciously. And by the way, and I say that as a compliment. I really do. I'm very serious about this, you guys. I'm not joking. Brian literally has been doing this to me all week. And it's funny because last night I was driving from Maryland to New York to do an event. And I was at this rest area, and I remember because he and I were not on the same page with this particular topic that we were discussing. And I tell you, man, he hit me hard with we could totally do it that way. Or we might want to consider blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling you, and he didn't just do it once in the conversation. He probably did it 4 different times in the conversation. Guys, the reason I'm telling you this is because Brian is so good at this stuff, he does it subconsciously. Doesn't even realize he's doing it. That's how good you need to get. When you get to the point where you're doing these things at a subconscious level, and your communication style changes, and you start getting what you want out of people. It's crazy how well it works. So what I want everybody on the webinar to do right now, I want you to type into your screen right now the one technique that you've learned so far that you are going to practice this week. Everybody type that into your screen right now, into your questions box. What one technique are you for sure going to practice this week? Okay, Debbie, I like that one. Debbie's going to do the today. She's going to hit the today. That's huge. I love that. Come on, Mary Jane, what are you going to do this week? I want to know what Kendra, Mary Jane, Glenn, who else we got on here? Sandra, Shannon. Come on, you guys. Steve Costa, come on, man. What are you going to practice this week? Aaron, what are you going to do? David, I want to know what you guys are going to do this week. I can't start rattling off everybody's names. We got too many people on the webinar, but not saying no. Michelle, that's fantastic. I love that. That's a great one, you guys. Eliminating the word. There we go. I got another one. Eliminating the word no. That's fantastic. So you guys practice these things all the day. I love that. Today and think, getting rid of the word think and using the word today. Oh, Kendra's going to work on because, using the word because as an alternative. So Brian, tell us one more time. When I use because, what am I doing at that point?
Well, basically, what you're doing is giving people a reason to do what you want them to do. And that's really the key for that, because a lot of times people, again, I'll go back to the photocopier example. There was no reason for me to let that person cut in front of me because I waited in line for 15 minutes. They can wait in line for 15 minutes. Why are they special? Well, because I've got to run to the hospital because my kid just broke his leg. Okay, well, that's a really good reason to get in front of me, make this photocopy. I know it sounds silly, and that's an extreme example, but ultimately you have to give people the right to make a choice. And, I make jokes about that when we're talking about, buyer's agents giving people permission to write an offer. And, one of my pet peeves, and you guys will hear this if you're at the seminar in Anaheim, my biggest pet peeve is you go spend 3 hours with somebody, at the end you forget to ask them to buy the house. And honestly, that's not a hard close. I give you permission to do something else. I give you permission to move forward. And if we don't give people permission to do things, if we don't give them a reason to do things, they might not. And I'm not saying that always will cause them to do things, but if you give them the opportunity, if it makes them feel comfortable, and that's one of my favorite embedded commands there, feel comfortable. So if we do that, then ultimately we can allow them to move forward. We can allow them to make the choices that they make. Again, remember, 70% of all people that you're going to talk to are high S's. They don't want to make decisions. We have to give them the path to walk down so that they can make a decision that's right for them. Again, not shoving something down somebody's throat, but giving them the opportunity to say, would I rather do this? Would I rather do this? Which one of these things works better for me? Is it better for me to go home and think about it? Or is it better for me to make an offer today so that I can go ahead and get this house that you told me, is not going to be here tomorrow? So,
Brian, I always forget what the alternative close is actually called. It's like when you say to somebody, would Thursday or Friday at 5 work better for you? What type of close is that?
We call it a slot close, basically, and the reason it's a slot close is you're putting them in a slot. You're putting them in the 3 o'clock slot or the 5 o'clock slot close.
Yeah, that just keyed in on when you were saying, do this because or do this. So one of the things that's funny, Kendra just got on. Kendra is one of our Club Wealth coaching members, and Kendra just got on and she types in, she's like, she's using NLP on herself right now. She's like, I'm going to do this because Coach Ron will be unhappy with me if I don't. So I'm not sure if NLP works that way, but it's awesome. That's a great affirmation.
So actually, it does. And so here's one of the things that I would tell you. And so again, Michael, that we do weekly sales meetings, and honestly, sometimes I feel like, there's 52 weeks in a year, and, about 40 weeks into the year, I kind of get to the point where sometimes it's hard to come up with stuff. They could hear it from you, but they've heard it from me not to mention every day in a morning huddle, but every week they get a little bit sick of me. So I was doing some research on some stuff, and why not write your affirmations in a way that's NLP? Why not trick yourself into doing the things that you want yourself to do? You want yourself to make more phone calls. You want yourself to, I don't know what specifically each agent's looking for. You want yourself to feel confident when I go to a listing appointment. So why not write your embedded commands and say them that way? You're not above it. So, you're, even if you, like you said, even if you knew apparently I was using NLP on you the other day and it took you a day and a half to remember. So, why not trick yourself into doing these things? And so if you're doing affirmations, which I'm a big fan of, as you know, Michael, I'm really pushing the Miracle Morning right now, because I think that's a really, I believe that that's a really great way to kind of get yourself going in the morning, get your day started out right. It gives you you're starting out on the right foot, but they have you do affirmations in that. Why not write them in a way that tricks yourself into doing what you're doing? If I do it this way and I get results of a 5, why not do it this way and get results of a 10? So absolutely.
That's good. As we've been talking, one of the things that's been running through my mind, I want to give you guys another set of words to eliminate and use as an alternative. So, and Brian, the turnabout's fair play. And you said this one time, and as soon as you said it, I thought, man, we got to work on that word too. So when Brian was talking, he said, if you guys go to the Business Strategy Mastermind Conference in Anaheim, which is coming up in November, and when he said the word "if," it was like nails on chalkboard for me, because that's one of the things, like, I'm a big assumptive close guy. And so I never, ever, ever say if. I always say when. And if you can switch if with when, you'd be amazed at the results, especially like on a listing appointment. I've been teaching listing all week this week. So when I'm on a listing appointment, I always talk to people. I don't say, hey, here's what it's like if you have your house on the market. I say, hey, let's chat about what it's like when you have your home on the market. And when I talk to them at the key box, when we have this key box on your house, when when we have your home listed, agents are going to come by. They're going to want to show your house. And when they open up that key box with their electronic key, it's going to tell me, blah, blah. And so I want to always be using when instead of if. This is very, very, very powerful. Brian, hit us with it. Go ahead.
No, I completely agree. And I talk as if, and that's exactly right. I'll say things like, after our showing, Chris is going to give you a call and give you a follow-up, because Chris is the person on our team that follows up with all the agents. I tell them the experience that they're going to have the entire time. So Chris is going to call you after we go under contract. Then Hallie will be handling your contract to close. She'll call you and make sure that we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I explain to them the entire experience that they're going to have. And I believe that a lot of other agents probably don't do that. A lot of other agents flip through their flip book, or if they bring a flip book, they go over their CMA. I want them to understand the experience they're going to have. So, I was listening to, of all things, Think and Grow Rich. I listened to it on my audio. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and they were talking about these assumptions that we make, and it's super important to put people in this mode of experience it. People never do anything for logic, and if you actually go back and just look at anything that you've purchased that costs more than a quarter in the last 10 years, you probably bought it because of how it felt. You didn't buy it because of because it's logical. You guys have seen me drink my Starbucks coffee. I didn't buy this because of logic. I buy this because I buy this every single day, and it makes me feel good. So we'll work on that. But ultimately, everything we do is because of how we feel, and it has almost very little to do. I would say that logic will cement a transaction, or logic will cement a deal. So I've got to, once I feel that I want to buy something and I make that decision, then I'll use the logic, like, oh, well, I needed a new computer because of this and this and this and this. But I didn't buy it because I really needed it. I bought it because I wanted a new computer, or because I wanted a new car, or whatever it is. And people list their house with you because it felt good. It never is because, well, Brian, he's the best guy for the job. And honestly, 99% of the time, they have no idea why they picked you. They might come up with a reason, and if you're a referral, that might be a little bit different. But if you go into a cold listing appointment, they picked you because they felt good about it. It has nothing to do with any of the things. I had someone tell me one day that, and I know I do more marketing than almost any other agent in our market. And I asked him at the end of the listing presentation, I said, so, how do you guys feel about what I do versus the other agents that you talked to? I know you've talked to a couple other agents. I said, it sounds like you do about the same stuff. And I was like, wow, I'm not going to get this listing because I clearly missed. Because they had no idea what, I hadn't built enough rapport, and they were just sitting through watching me flip pages. So, those are good things. And I tell everybody on our team, every time you go to an appointment, listing appointment, buyer's agent appointment, no matter what, whether you got it or you didn't, take some time and reflect on that. What did you do and what you didn't do? Because that will allow you to make some of your better choices as you move forward. So anyway, any questions we got at all, Michael?
Oh yeah, as you say that, I want you guys to be thinking about this too. When you get done with that appointment, and you found some things you need to do that differently next time. Journal it. Literally, have a little journal in your car, so that when you come out of there, you're like, okay, I got to do this different. You're going to write that down every single time, so that next time you can tweak it. And if you've got your checklist, and those of you that are using the 44-point listing appointment checklist, go through, take a red pen, and alter the checklist to match those things that dawned on you that, hey, I need to do that a little bit differently. Now, one of the things there's a technique that Brian shared with us that has a name, and he didn't mention it, but he used the technique, and it's called future casting. And future casting is very, very important. Now, what future casting is, for example, if I'm talking to somebody about coaching, I'll say, okay, so when you get signed up for coaching, Tara is going to give you a call, and she's going to go over this, this, and this, or you're going to receive this, this, and this. So I want to make sure that they understand that, again, it's using the word when. When this happens, then this is going to happen, as if it's a foregone conclusion. And that future cast, so what happens is, in their mind, they're drawing neural pathways in their brain. Every time I say when, they start to picture in their mind what it's like. Okay, you're going to receive, when you sign up for coaching, you're going to receive a big box. In that box is going to be another small box. And in that small box is the 37-minute guaranteed listing presentation kit. I want you to go through that. It's important that you watch the video. So I'm future casting the entire time. I'm telling them what to expect, and they're picturing the box in their mind. They can see the big gray box. They can see the little white box inside. They see themselves pulling the video out. They can see themselves putting it in their DVD player. This is huge, you guys. It's programming neural pathways in their brain that cause them to naturally come to that conclusion that they want to work with you. So you need to talk about when you list the home, we're going to put the key box on, and you've got to walk through step by step through what to expect when their home is listed, so that the foregone conclusion is, okay, let's sign the paperwork today. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Brian. I don't mean to keep taking over on this, but I love what you're saying, and you just blow through some of the stuff because it's so second nature to you. You just throw it out there, and you don't even realize, man, you just dropped another huge bomb on people with future casting. I don't think that a lot of people saw that.
Well, and so here's a couple of points that I've, Michael. So, I've been doing sales in some sort of straight commission job where basically the only way I got paid was if I sold something since 2001. Actually, take it back, since 2000. So for me, again, I only knew I was only going to get to talk to X number of people, and I needed to do a better job with each one of those people I talked to. So I've been working on this since then. So the team leaders who are out there who are considering adding members, or if you already have members, here's a mistake that Brian made. Here's a mistake that I'm going to suggest to you that can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars and literally watch leads burn out your door. We say as a rule that you're going to get about 50 leads a month. I think that's kind of a standard throughout our industry that, buyer's agents are going to get about 50 leads a month. Well, if you give a buyer's agent 50 leads and they do horribly with all 50 of those leads, and each of your leads, I looked the other day, my Zillow leads cost about $38 a piece. So we'll make that 40. So how much money did that literally cost me to burn through those 50 leads? We can do that math, and it's a lot of money. So and then I'm doing this every month and every month. If you make the assumption that I hand you a lead and that you will do the same job with it that I will do with it, that's a very, very bad assumption. So, and I did that for years. I'm like, I don't understand why when I give these people leads, they're closing at 2% and I'm closing them at 9%. Well, the reason is because I had a bunch of training that I forgot that I had. So if you are a team leader, if you are someone who's looking to get a buyer's agent on your team, we think about, oh gosh, we don't want to do role playing. We don't want to do scripting. We don't want to do NLP. I promise you that this is a $500 an hour to $1,000 an hour activity, practicing this stuff with your team. If you got one person on your team, guess what? You're the role play partner. If you got two buyer's agents on your team or a buyer's agent listing, whatever it is, they need to role play together, but you need to give them that opportunity, or you're going to do the exact same thing that I did. Be smarter than me and don't do that. So I think that's super important, and I did it, and I'm sure probably thousands of agents across the country just assume, well, if I get somebody and they want to go look at some houses, surely they'll close those people. That's not true. So, this stuff is very second nature to some people, but very few. And those of us who's it's second nature to, it's probably not as second nature as we think. It's second nature because we did it for 15 years.
That's right.
So
I
I'm not sure how that method fit in, but I think it's important.
I think it's important too, Brian. And I remember having that conversation with you, about almost 2 years ago now, where, we were looking at, well, why is it, so-and-so is not closing as well as so-and-so? And it's like, people like, I see we've got Kathy Toth online, and Kathy is freaking rock star, right? Kathy, you have no idea how much knowledge you have in your head. You have had so much training over the years. You are so good at what you do. You're repetitively just a rock star everywhere you go, and you're doing this stuff subconsciously all the time. But the people on your team, they don't have that amount of training. They don't have the years and years of experience in practicing these techniques that you do. And so, you guys, if you're a buyer's agent on team, get your team leader to practice this with you. Make it a priority. Beg them for it. Do whatever you got to do, but make sure that it's happening on your teams. And for those of you, like Brian said, if you're a team leader, this is high dollars per hour stuff. You want to get better ROI on your Realtor.com, quit whining about scripts and start worrying about teaching your team a little bit of NLP. Teach them the language of sales. Teach them the psychology behind the words that they're saying, so it's not just reciting a script. They actually understand what it is they're saying and why they're saying it and the result that it will lead to. And guess what? It'll happen more naturally. Their close rates will go up and your ROI will go through the roof. You've got to do that with your teams, you guys. And so I don't mean to get on my soapbox, but I love you guys and I want you to do really, really well with this. And your buyer's agents deserve the best from you. And that means you've got to take the time to train them. The very best way to train them is every single morning on that daily huddle. There is no better spot than on the morning huddle every single morning to throw just one small thing out. So for tomorrow, make it this. Let's eliminate if and start talking about when. Let's eliminate think and let's talk about feel. And let's eliminate later and let's work on today. Let's focus on these words and let's get these languages in here. Let's work on those embedded commands. Whatever it is, pick that one thing that you're going to do and do it over and over and over again this week. Brian, we're 2 minutes over time. I'm going to turn it back to you to close this out. So tell us what's the parting thoughts. What do you want to make sure everybody comes away from today with?
So the one thing I would come away from today with is if you found something that you have to come away with today, do it. And what I mean by that, on our team, if we have a meeting and we talk about embedded commands, we talk about if we talk about when, any of these things that we talk about for the next 7 days until we have our next meeting, we have to practice it. We literally write it down. We use a program. It doesn't really matter, but ultimately you can use, there's a million different things, but ultimately we do homework. And I know that sounds very unappealing to most people. We're not in high school anymore, but nonetheless, if you practice it, you're good. You do not want to practice this for the first time when you're sitting in a listing presentation and you go, if, I mean when. So you guys practice, and it's really, really easy, and it'll change everything for you. So, we do role playing, and again, I really appreciate the opportunity to do this today, Michael, and I think it went really well.
Yeah, I agree. This is fantastic. It was great information, Brian. So we're going to give one last quick shout out to anybody that's got any questions. Type them in. But we are 2 minutes over time, and we do need to get going. I actually have to go get on an airplane. For those of you that haven't signed up yet, make sure you go to clubwealth.com/BSM. I'm going to type it in. It's clubwealth.com/BSM. Check out the video on that page. Get signed up for the Business Strategy Mastermind Conference. I promise you, you'll be super glad you did. We're going to be talking about these types of things. We've got Facebook techniques. We've got some of the best speakers in the world. We've got some of the best content. We've got a specific buyer agent boot camp. For those of you that have buyer's agents, you want to turn them into rock stars, get them out to BSM. They're going to spend a good chunk of their time in the buyer agent boot camp where they're learning exactly how do I go from being an agent doing 1 or 2 transactions a month as a buyer's agent? How do I do 10 transactions a month like Heather does? Well, guess what? Heather's going to be there teaching us how she does it. We're going to have Brian teaching the buyer's agents how he gets his buyer's agents now who are closing 30 to 40 transactions a month as a team. How do you do that? So get out there, make sure you participate in it. And for those of you that are team leaders, we're going to have mastermind breakouts for you guys. It's going to be phenomenal. You're going to get to know people that you've never met in the industry before. Will change your world, I promise you. You guys, you hear me say this every time we do a webinar. I mean it. Inside you is a world-class beast dying to come out. You've got to unleash that beast. You've got to be unafraid to get out there and do more, be more, and really truly become that world-class person that you were meant to become. Share it with the world. Brian Curtis, thank you so much for your time. You are a rock star. Have a fantastic day, everybody. And remember, again, you are world-class.
Thanks, everybody.